Welcome back. It's August 4th. I'm Ryan,
I'm Caleb.
And I'm Steven.
and this is Bromula One, the podcast where we are not professionals, we are not pundits, we're not engineers, but we just like talking Formula One with the bros. And, right, guys? Right? You happy to be here?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
As you can tell, we're winging this. And we have three main segments we'd like to cover today. We have the Bro View, the review of the year so far up to this point. We have Bromance, where we want to get into some of the, maybe the driver drama. And then we have predictions for the rest of the year.
Love it.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So for review, Caleb, what's your first half takeaways? Any big things that are sticking out to you?
There's really one super large thing that's sticking out to me, and that's it's been the season of the Red Bull, the year of the Red Bull. I hope it's not going to be the year of the Red Bull, but yeah, Red Bull has a spaceship, not even a rocket ship, an entire spaceship that can go into hyperdrive, and everyone else, has a Formula One car, and it's frustrating to see the disparity, but it's been incredible seeing just the potential that these cars have with Red Bull, and I'd like to see the rest of the field catch up. So that's been my biggest note for the first half of the season. There's been a lot of ups and downs between second, third, fourth fastest car and positions switching, but I'm sure you guys are going to talk about that.
Yeah, I definitely mirror your sentiment. Red Bull's advantage, specifically in the hands of Max, has just been head and shoulders above the rest. And if we look at their development from last year to this year, there wasn't this big, huge jump that they made. They improved the car. They brought forth a couple of new chassis that they were holding on to. They had those in hand at the end of last season, didn't bring them. Brought those this year, just very standard step forward. Really, I think the difference is the fact that nobody else took as big of a step. You had one big contender coming in, and that was Aston Martin going from 7th to 2nd in Bahrain. That was incredible, and I'd like to see more of that. McLaren has just done a recent step forward, so the proof of concept is there. What's holding back Mercedes and Ferrari from taking these incremental jumps to catch back up to the backs of the Red Bull? What do you think, Ryan?
I have an idea. Adrian Newey, maybe? just
Who's
thought.
Adrian Newey? Explain to our listeners.
Well, for you newcomers, Adrian Newey is, I don't know his exact title, maybe Steven, but he's essentially in charge of designing Red Bull's car. And I think, with new regulations that came into play in 2022, I think Red Bull just really hit the ground running. They nailed it. We see a lot of shuffling of teams when there are new regulations. I know, Steven, you kind of thought that Mercedes was going to keep running with it. And I was like, I don't know. Let's see, see what happens. And sure enough, Red Bull nailed it. And I think the other teams, especially Mercedes, have been playing catch up. So it's been very exciting. Like Caleb, you said, from, P2 onwards, Max has just been very, very dominant. The Red Bull setting records, and I don't know if that answers your question, Steven. But,
Yeah, absolutely. And the frustrating thing is that it just doesn't seem like there's an end in sight.
No.
We've seen in previous years, in 2021, even last year, a lot of the advantages were track specific. You'd see Ferrari do really well in one track and then give up that advantage the next track. But this year, the car is just good everywhere. It's taking pole position in Monaco, but also in Spa. Monza's just going to be another takeaway for that car. It's just a rocket ship. So hopefully we'll see some shakeups, but not crossing my fingers, not holding my breath.
I don't think there's much else to say in terms of reviewing the first half of the season. It's been Red Bull, Red Bull, Red Bull. I think it's been good to see how consistent Mercedes has been. Although I don't think they, like you said, Ryan, have been able, or Steven, I can't remember, they haven't been able to make that leap in terms of catching Red Bull. But Mercedes seems to have been the most consistent team outside of Red Bull. Ferrari, sometimes you never know what you're going to get. Aston Martin seems to have just completely disappeared. McLaren seems to have replaced him. It's just, like you said, Ryan, P2 and back is just an amazing season. P1, Red Bull, take the trophy, go into the sunset, have a long off season, enjoy yourselves.
One of the cool things about Formula One, though, is that a lot of the meat and potatoes are in the midfield. If you were to delete Red Bull from the face of the earth, you would have at the beginning of the season an Alonso championship runaway, potentially. Right. And then you'd have Lewis coming back, snagging a couple of podiums. And then out of nowhere, you've got Ferrari, Charles on pole.
And then McLaren.
Yeah.
And now McLaren. So if you take away Red Bull, this Formula 1.5 season that we've got going on has actually been very, very entertaining. And if we were to continue with this little simulation, who takes the championship this year?
You mean from P2 onward?
Yeah, I mean, Red Bull doesn't exist. Hey, we'll even include Checo. Who wins the championship?
Including Checo.
Constructors only.
Oh.
So Checo's on the grid still.
Checo by himself.
No Red Bull.
Doesn't change my prediction either way, whether he's on or off.
All right.
Well, I think we can look at both of those things, the Red Bull dominance on one hand, and then the battle P2 onward. Both have been truly extraordinary. Like we always talk about, the midfield is so tight, but really this year it's been very, very tight. You see Williams up there fighting every now and then. Occasionally Nico Hulkenberg will pump in a fast lap, and so. I don't want to just dismiss it and be like, it's so boring because Red Bull is dominating. I think it's rare when you have a team like this that is just connecting and firing on all cylinders, and Max is the top of his game. His engineer is killing it. Adrian Newey is on top of it. And the whole team, this record has stood for 25 years, of not being touched, or 35 years or whatever it is. Yeah, 35 years. Math. 1988 McLaren, 12 wins in a row. Like that's no small feat. So I think we're witnessing something truly remarkable. I can understand why a lot of fans that have jumped on with Drive to Survive have just kind of fizzled out and been like, Red Bulls are running away with it. This is boring. But really, for like us true fans, like this is as much a sport of like man and his achievements and machine and its achievements coming together. So for me, even though Max is running away with it, I still think it's exciting. I think it's phenomenal what he's been doing. And at the same time, I'm still enjoying the fight behind him while he's off running into the distance.
Now, do you think at this point we're actually kind of rooting for all these records to come tumbling down? At first, I think we were all kind of like, let's not have another dominant season. Those are always boring. We want a title clash. But once that was quickly apparent that it wasn't going to happen, I feel like some of the masses, at least, a lot of the moderate ones are just like, let's see what they can do, with this crazy advantage. Can they take on the juggernauts of old in the sport?
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like, go ahead, Caleb.
Oh, no worries. I think they definitely will. I mean, you've got Sebastian Vettel, 9 race wins in a row. What's Max at right now? Is he at like 6,
8,
7?
Is he at 9?
8. Oh my word!
I think he's at 9. I think no,
because Checo won races
8,
2 and 4. I think he's at 8. Yeah.
He'll tie it in Zandvoort.
Oh, yeah. He's gonna do it. I think, even though I wasn't even born in 1988, I don't think any of us. Ryan, you may have been close.
I was alive.
Ryan was born.
Yeah. There you go, man.
3 years old.
Little in your diaper still.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote down in my notes, Red Bull equals most dominant car ever and driver pairing ? Is this?
Yeah, I think at this point we've got to really, really dive into the weeds. When you talk about the most dominant thing of all time, you're kind of splitting hairs. So it comes down to what you define as most dominant. Is it the biggest gap to second? Is it maintaining the highest level of competitiveness, which would be to win every race? Just kind of depends. The reliability of modern day Formula One cars really makes the comparison across generations difficult. But
True.
but what would make them the most dominant car in your mind? We'll start with Ryan.
Oh man, I think a clean sweep of the season. Red Bull to win every race. I can't remember. You're crying, poor Lando. But who was it last episode? You talked about the total number of points that Max had missed out this season. What was that? Like 20 something points?
22 points.
22.
21 points. Yeah.
22 points that Max has missed out on this year. I mean that. I think Red Bull would have to win every race for the rest of the season. In order for me to sit back and be like, okay, that's probably the most dominant season ever. Because to Steven's point, reliability back in the 80s, with these cars, you'd have multiple retirements every race on average. And for them to win the amount of races they did in 88 was insane, given the reliability of those cars. So that's a good point you bring up.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I'd have to agree with Ryan. A clean sweep, I think, would do it for me. But Steven, you bring up a good point with the reliability. It's just hard to compare eras. I mean, a lot of other fans and of other sports try and do it, especially you see it in basketball a lot with MJ and LeBron. But I think it's really, really hard to compare the nature of the sport even. The sport is always evolving. And the next regulation change for F1 is in 2026. That's just a few years away. And so we're going to see even more shifting as Formula One, or shifting of standards as Formula One evolves into the net zero era.
You just had a really good opportunity for us to transition into the next segment, comparing drivers. And let's talk about some of the drama that we are potentially about to experience. We are in silly season. Ryan, this is your topic here. What do you got for us?
Well, we call this bromance, right? The relationship between drivers. You always like it when they get along, but I think behind the scenes, maybe we just don't. We definitely don't understand the dynamics of the relationships, right? There's a lot of PR, a lot of camera time. They got to get along for photo shoots and events and videos and whatnot. But I often wonder what things are like behind the scenes. So if you were to pick, either one of you can chime in, any of the driver pairings this year, who stands out as maybe getting along the best versus maybe those who are struggling a little bit to get along?
Ooh, that's a good.
I know it's.
That's a good question.
I'll take this one. Give Caleb a second to think. I'm going to go with Aston Martin getting along the best. Fernando Alonso is just feeding Lance Stroll brake settings, mid-race. He's watching on the TV saying, nice overtake, Lance, and doesn't realize it's for 17th place. Way to go, Lance. You're up to 12th now. I'm really proud of you, buddy. Here I am in
Lance, that was a nice
13th.
overtake.
Yeah. Daddy's going to know which one is the real son.
It's because of a lack of competition, huh?
Yeah. I'll say they've got the best in terms of relationship because Alonso doesn't have any competition and Stroll's not going anywhere.
Right. And Stroll knows you can't compete with Alonso. I mean, he knows he can't go to toe-to-toe. So why would he get bent out of shape about it?
I think the worst relationship, I feel like it's up for debate with several teams, but any teammate of Esteban Ocon, I feel like just always has a terrible relationship with the guy. His whole goal, from my point of view, is to beat his teammate, not even beat the other cars on the grid. So I'd have to say Alpine and their two drivers, even though I think they will stay for a few more years, depending on how they do.
So, yeah, you got two Frenchmen, and, there's the whole, stereotypical French, mentality. They're proud. They
drive for a French team.
I know. Two French drivers with a French team. That's a lot of pressure, man. And so they are a new driver pairing. I think, the newness of a driver pairing can bring out like some hostility because, like, let's say Daniel Ricciardo coming into AlphaTauri, now Yuki's like, okay, like now I have a benchmark. Everybody knows how highly rated Daniel Ricciardo is. Nobody really knew Nick DeVries, how well he would perform in a Formula One car, so it's hard to compare, one with the other. So I think that, AlphaTauri is one where I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm interested to see if Yuki's going to continue to say, like, I've enjoyed having an experienced teammate. I've learned a lot from him. I'm wondering how that dynamic's going to go. But Yuki seems fairly easy to get along with, I think. So does Daniel. I don't know.
I think so.
I'm going to push back a little bit back on you, Caleb, because in Australia, we had on the restart, we had Pierre Gasly coming back from the gravel and then crashed out Ocon, which was the first of then 3 double DNFs by Alpine. We have since seen Otmar get fired. We've lost the CTO, the CEO. They are just cleaning house, and it doesn't look like they're stopping anytime soon.
No.
To go from beating Aston Martin and McLaren last year by the skin of their teeth, and to go to where they're at now, I think they've definitely fallen off the most. But you don't hear it from the drivers as much, and I kind of think that's interesting because their tassels and collisions, with the exception of Australia, haven't been together. It's been someone else coming up the middle or whatever. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with them in the future.
That's a good point that you bring up. Going back to what you were talking about, Ryan, with AlphaTauri, I think there's a general understanding that Daniel Ricciardo was put in that seat with AlphaTauri because of Checo's performances.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really, really cold streak of about 6 races, I believe, where he never made it into Q3 in the fastest car on the track.
Yeah.
And so I think they pushed Nick DeVries out a little earlier than I think he may have deserved, and they put Daniel Ricciardo in there. Now my question is, what is the benchmark that either Yuki or Daniel has to achieve in order to replace Checo?
Oof. It's a good question.
Or is
and
there one?
I mean, what it is, we don't know. We're just speculating on it. But I think it's, with Toro Rosso and AlphaTauri traditionally being like the seeder team for Formula One, you promote from these, the junior team upward. I think Yuki and Daniel have a lot to compete for. And I think they know that. And I think there's pressure there. So I'm really, this is going to be my second half, like, excitement, is seeing this battle between Yuki and Daniel, unfold. Yeah, exactly.
For me, I think I'm gonna reshape that answer slightly, and I think it has less to do with Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki than it does Sergio and how he does for the remainder. While we're on the topic of Red Bull, I want to share some interesting news that we heard that potentially Perez's contract is affected by his performance deficit to his teammate. So he could be losing out on money because of this 125-point deficit to the championship leader. And I just think that's crazy because in all walks of life, sometimes we get bonuses and those are dependent on our performance, but your base salary to be chopped just because homeboy next to you is doing better, it's a cutthroat game.
It is a cutthroat game.
Meanwhile, Max has things in his contract that he gets $45,000 per point, $250,000 extra per win, $10 million for winning the championship, and a $40 million base pay. And granted, these are all speculated numbers. He's on track for an $80 million salary just for Formula One.
No sponsorships or anything like that.
That's not including sponsorships.
But the taxes on those bonuses, though,
in every single way. His super license is more expensive.
Oh man, yeah. There's been a lot of talk lately in the press and whatnot. Sergio saying something to the effect of like 90% of drivers would crumble next to Max. So I'm not sure if he was including himself in that 90% grouping.
There was a tear as he spoke that. Yeah.
I don't know if he's admitting that he's crumbling or he's defending himself. But then you've got drivers like Lewis Hamilton saying, hey, man, if I were in that Red Bull, Max wouldn't be having such a good time, as he is now. I'm curious what you guys thought about.
Yeah, he's saying I'm the 10%.
Yeah. It's
Sergio?
comments like those that make you love Formula One, though. I mean, all these drivers 100% believe that they are the best on the grid. And I think the drama really stems when drivers are just getting smoked by their teammate in equal machinery. And that's also another aspect of Formula One that makes it so fun to watch is, yeah, you got teams competing for the championship, but you also got drivers competing for a seat every single season.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo, I think one of the sport's favorite drivers, lost out on a seat in Formula One for half a season. It was very short-lived, thank goodness, but because of his performance compared to his teammate, we've seen a number of Nick DeVries, for example, already gone, replaced by Daniel Ricciardo because of his performance compared to his teammate. And so you love to speculate about what if Lewis and Max were teammates or in equal machinery, what would go on? If Fernando Alonso and Lewis were teammates, I mean, that did happen, but what if it happened again? I think those are fun things to speculate. So it's always fun seeing those little competitions within Formula One.
We'll tie up this segment and lead into the next. But I want to hear one last thing, and this might be the lead into the predictions. Do you guys think anyone is guaranteed to lose their seat for next year?
Okay, Brian, I'll let you go first.
Sure. At this moment, being halfway through the season, I think any driver has a chance to redeem themselves. So right now, I can't see anyone losing their seat. I still think Logan Sargent, is of all the drivers maybe the most likely to be in jeopardy, but he's a rookie. He's an American. He's young. He's proven himself in younger categories to be consistent. And I think maybe with a little more time, maybe a better car, Logan could save his seat. I think so. Maybe that answers the question is of the 20 drivers, I think Logan might be the most in danger, but again, we're halfway through the season and he's a rookie. So I think he needs a little more time.
I have an interesting stat to add on to your point, Ryan.
Ooh, bring
Logan Sargent is the only driver to not out-qualify his teammate in a single race this season. 12-0 to Alexander Albon.
But
pretty.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But Albon is a good racer. I think he's a good driver. I think he's been able to wring the neck of that Williams and gotten more out of it than it is able to give in many situations. So I don't see that as a mark against Sargent. I just see that as Albon is performing very, very well.
That's the same way I view it. Albon is doing incredible in that Williams. It's incredible seeing him perform. Steven, I have two drivers. Checo, we already talked about him. I don't need to say more. We kind of know the stipulations and requirements.
So do you think he's losing his seat, though?
Spill it.
Do I hope? Yes. Do I think he will? No. I think Red Bull is winning this championship so comfortably that they don't really care. I mean, as long as he is finishing P2, I think it won't be a question in their minds. I think Kevin Magnussen could lose his seat. I think he will lose his seat if he continues to perform the way he's performing, though. He has just seemed I forget he's on the grid sometimes. I think his car has had some reliability issues as well. I think both Hasses have had terrible cars in terms of reliability and just in terms of a car. It's so bad. But I think Kevin Magnussen is just being dominated by Nico Hulkenberg every single weekend. So those are my two. Steven?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with the K-Mag. Unfortunately, he's just not up to par with what Nico's been able to do. Nico had a qualifying session that he ended Q2 or P2. So after a couple of grid penalties, he dropped down to like 7th. And then by lap 2, he was 18th. But he still put it on there. And I think, K-Mag's crowning moment was last year, that wet session. I think it was Brazil. So the sprint he started, on pole. But again, zero consistency, it seems. So I like the guy, but I just think it's time.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our bromances, unless anyone has any little piece of information. I'd like to add just a few things. I've seen an article stating that they might announce 2 new Formula One teams within the next month, and there have been several, car manufacturers that are vying for a bid. And I read an article from the CEO of Formula, or I guess the owner, whatever his role is. He would specifically like a team from America and a team from China, which is very interesting. I think that's maybe a marketing strategy as well for Formula One. I don't know if those teams will do great, but that's an article I read recently. So we could see some exciting news over the summer break, maybe right after.
That's interesting because we haven't raced in China for the past 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It's a great track, though. I like the
When
circuit.
it's on the calendar.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we could see some interesting stuff. Yeah.
Maybe China's the new America. I don't know. Do they have a Chinese version of Drive to Survive? Coming out soon. I don't know. But
Yeah. Who knows? They do have a Chinese driver.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's a population of 1 billion people, so that's a lot of money. And we all know this is a sport about money. Money is very important.
Oh yeah.
Money talks.
Money talks. Well, let's get into predictions. I'm sure you guys, Stephen, Ryan, you have your notes, your predictions, some things you'd like to see, some things you'd maybe not want to see, but you think are inevitable. Stephen, let's start us off with one of your predictions for the rest of the season.
I think, the most important one is who finishes second in the constructors. And I'm going to go with Mercedes. I think they have the consistency between the 2 drivers. They've had the fastest car consistently outside of Red Bull, and just seeing how much fire Lewis still has, and Russell has a lot to prove still. He is not on the level of the Georges, the Charles, the Maxes, and now with Lando's recent performance and Oscar's performance, he's slipping to them too. So he's got a lot to prove. Looking to see Mercedes jump back and firmly hold on to P2 in the constructors.
Yeah, let's stick with Mercedes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Caleb.
No, you go ahead. I was thinking you might change the subject, and I had something to add to that. But if you're staying on it, Ryan, you go ahead.
Yeah, I want to stay on Mercedes for a second. I like Steven said, George has been struggling a little bit against against Hamilton this year. And as a Lewis fan, I'm happy to see that, that Lewis still has what it takes, at my age of, almost 38 years old. So I would like to see George bring it for the second half of the season. So my prediction is he's going to be a little bit more on it than he was in the first half of the season.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe prediction right there, having Mercedes in P2. I guess nothing's ever really safe in Formula One, though, so I shouldn't say that. But my prediction contradicts both of you. And I think this is a little bold, but I predict that Ferrari will jump Mercedes and finish P2.
Okay.
And I don't have a whole lot of data backing me up. This is more of just a gut feeling and maybe just some drama I'd like to see unfold. But I think Ferrari will jump Mercedes and finish P2. I think some things that might influence Ferrari finishing above Mercedes. I have seen some rumors that they have some pretty sweet upgrade packages coming up soon. I know every team always has some sweet upgrade packages coming soon, but they just signed Charles Leclerc to, I think it was a 5-year or 2 to 3 year, I don't know, extension. So he's locked up, and I don't think he's had the greatest time this last contract with Ferrari, especially with the previous team principal and the strategies going on there. But I think with his belief in the team, I think Ferrari is going to take it to Mercedes.
Let's review for one brief moment how spicy of a prediction Ferrari in P2 is. All right, they just finished third in their last race, only to the 2 Red Bulls. So they've got a fast car here. It's not like flip a coin here.
But you got to remember, in Silverstone, I mean, we got Carlos Sainz. This was 3 races ago. Finishing, what did he finish? 10th or 11th? He got passed by a Williams. So they look really good. Their highs are high, their lows are low. Whereas Mercedes is just, boom. I think Lewis has never finished below. I'm not going to say, but I think he's always finishing the points every race. So,
all right, big prediction. This is the one we've always been waiting for. Are they going to win it all? Red Bull, are they going to win everything?
I'll take a stab. I think if there are no DNFs, if Max doesn't experience some sort of technical failure, engine failure, something like that, or getting shunted by, Bottas, who's going bowling on lap 1, turn 1, I think that Max has the chance to win every race. Yeah, I really do.
I think the one race that Red Bull might not win, and we've talked about this previously outside of the podcast, but Singapore is an all quali type race. I mean, it's a street race. It's really hard to pass. So I could see that race being a question mark. And that
you steal my answer. I 100% agree. I actually think I'm going to predict that they don't win everything. I think we might see a similar quali mishap like we did last year. And so Max is starting 7th. Is Sergio going to be P1 this year to hold on? I don't think so. I think Sergio is going to his woes are going to continue. And I think there's going to be a chance for another team to jump in when Max either doesn't have it or, something happens. Because we have seen countless times, we've said, well, you think you've seen it all in Formula One, but you have not.
Yeah, will we see that Max is either human or machine? To be determined.
Yeah, he's a cyborg, man. He's actually melded to the car at this point.
He is one with the car. It's a little USB-C that plugs in,
Yeah. Isn't that something, though? Like, you mentioned, if it's left up to Sergio to win the race, we don't have confidence in him to do that. And yet, all season long, the minimum expectation we have for Checo is to finish P2, right? He has the best car on the grid. I think that's pretty much well established. And the fact that we don't have faith in him to do that when Max isn't capable or able to show up, I think is telling. I think we're going to continue to see the fall of Checo. And kind of going back to bromance, I think his seat is going to be opened up.
Yeah, he's definitely on the hot seat for sure. Too many races in a row where he just not only was he not there, but he was nowhere. Qualifying and just total boneheaded mistakes. Q1 in Monaco, just binning it. There's no reason for you to be putting your car towards the limit in a Q1 session. Just get the bankers in. He did it the same thing in FP1 most recently. You're like, come on, dude, just drive the car. No big deal.
Yeah,
so
100%. All right. I think there is a spicy battle for just the top 5 order in general. Do either of you have an idea of where, or you want to take a stab at predictions for top 5 teams in the constructors and how they finish? We got the first 2.
All right, I'll go.
Red Bull, Mercedes?
Yeah.
Yeah, with you 2, yeah.
I'll go Red Bull first. Mercedes, Ferrari. I'm going to go Aston Martin holds on, and then McLaren. But close. I think McLaren is going to be like right there. That one could be flipped very easily.
So just so you all know, current standings are Red Bull sitting on 503 points. Mercedes, 247. Less than half. That's insane. So 247 for Mercedes, 196 for Aston, 191 for Ferrari, 103 McLaren. And then it drops down to Alpine with 57 points. And the rest back there, 11, 9, and 3 points. Like, they're just not in contention. So I think it would be a pretty big ask for McLaren to jump up over either Aston or Ferrari in makeup 90-plus points at this point of the season. I don't think it's impossible. They'd have to be really on their form for the rest of the year. So I'm going to be very conservative and say that the standings are going to stand for the rest of the year with Red Bull, Mercedes, Aston, Ferrari, and McLaren.
All
Wow.
right.
Very conservative.
That is pretty bold considering, well, that
You
is
think Aston's
conservative.
going
but
to
also
stay ahead of
bold.
Ferrari? No way,
Uh,
man.
Aston.
No way.
Yeah, I think Fernando's coming back.
He got P5, baby,
All right.
in Belgium. I
Charles
will just
got
quickly
third.
state mine. He did get third,
Uh.
yeah. And Carlos would have been up there too if he didn't have that DNF.
And Stroll would not have been
Oscar,
up there
goodness,
because he
Oscar,
did not
don't
have a
make the
DNF.
Yeah, I'm just banking
Yeah.
on the Ferrari's race team strategy to really put Aston
Yeah.
Martin up there.
I think that's a pretty solid bank right there. You're going to be cashing some checks soon. I think Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and these two. Honestly, Mercedes probably is going to finish P2, but I had to switch it up a bit. And then I think Aston will hold on just because they have such a big gap between that they've built up to McLaren. I think they've finished on the podium 6 times this year, and McLaren's only finished twice. This year, so they got a lot of work to do. I do think it's going to be close though, and that'll be a fun battle to watch. And I think if there are unfortunate events for either team, that may as well determine 4th and 5th in the order that ends up being in.
Let's do a fun one. How
Let's do
many
it.
points does Daniel Ricciardo end the season with?
Ooh.
How about we'll just go higher or lower than 3 points? Because that's what Yuki has right now.
Higher.
Higher, easy.
Okay.
What about you?
I was going to guess 5 or 6 points.
Yeah. I could see him having 2 or 3 solid finishes up in 8th, 9th, 10th.
Or what are we going to do if he's scoreless? We have to do something weird.
We have to drink out of our shoe.
Oh, a shoey.
Oh, I think that's if he makes a podium. I'll do a shoe if he makes a podium.
All right. I'll do that.
I'll
I'll do
film you
it
guys.
with
I'll
you.
film you guys.
If Danny Rick
All
makes
right,
a
you
podium,
heard it here first, folks. We are doing shoeies if Daniel Ricciardo gets on a podium this year.
Oh my word, I love it.
This is a safe bet. I don't think it's going to happen.
yeah, that's why I took it. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
my word.
conservative.
That is a sick bet.
All right, guys. Anything else before we wrap it up?
No,
Man.
listeners, if you have something you'd like us to talk about or clarify or discuss further, let us know in whatever avenue you can reach us at.
That's right. That's right. All right. We love talking about Formula One. We are newbies. We're learning. We're figuring things out as we go, but we want to talk about it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you later.